Good afternoon and welcome to the Rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 17th of September. The Pentagon Missile Defense Agency chief sexually harassed staffers for 7 years. Also in the news, a grand jury in Omaha charges the white bar owner in the death of a black protester. Also, Derek Chauvin blames his former colleagues for George Floyd's death. The former Minneapolis police officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes says that the two other officers failed to de-escalate the situation. And in other news, Hurricane Sally has swamped the U.S. Gulf Coast with massive floods and unreal rain. Also in election news, Donald Trump blames blue states for increasing the nation's coronavirus death rates, ignoring high rates in red states. And a police officer suspended for holding a black doctor at gunpoint on his own driveway. And lastly, Yelp data shows 60% of business closures due to the coronavirus pandemic are now closed permanently. Let's get to the news. The former civilian head of the Pentagon's Missile Defense Agency sexually harassed 2 women in his office for 7 years, subjecting one woman to unwanted attention and photographing her buttocks, and massaging another woman during a mentoring session, according to a Pentagon Inspector General report released on Wednesday. John James retired early this year as the Inspector General's office continued its investigation. James, the former executive director of the agency, told investigators that his interaction with the women were attempts to mentor them. USA Today obtained the report under the Freedom of Information Act. Bloomberg News first reported that the senior officials had quit his post after the investigation had begun. James did not offer a formal response to the Inspector General's findings, although he did speak with investigators and denied taking any photos of the first woman and massaging the second one. He blamed the complaints on disgruntled employees passed over for promotions. Hey. Good afternoon and welcome once again to the Rundown. I am, of course, your host, Captivating Christian, and this is a particular part of the show where I just talk about, give my own personal commentary on the articles of this afternoon. But first, let's get the business out of the way. To all new subscribers or new viewers of the channel, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the content here at Cap Hill. I would ask that you like, share, and subscribe, as well as hit that notification button, that bell down there, so you will never miss another update or anything that's going on here at Cap Hill. And to my state reps that are you in the chat, welcome. As always, it is great to see you. So let's get started. All right. So our first story coming out of the Pentagon. Right. So we have a former civil head of the Pentagon's Missile and Defense Agency charged with sexual harassment of 2 women. Okay. 2 women for 7 years. I'll wait. 7 years though? 7 years. That's a long time. In the age of Me Too and everything else, that is a very long time. I mean, it's a bit still disgusting, but 7 years makes you want to side eye just a little bit. So anyway, brief rundown of this story is that this particular person, John James, has been allegedly taking pictures of one of the women's buttocks and giving her unwanted attention, as well as during a mentoring session with another female, he was like massaging her and feeling up on her, basically leading with his
Penis.
Yes, leading with his just
Penis.
out everywhere. Out everywhere. So, yeah, I just don't know what to say about that. Although, I think once he had gotten wind that he was being investigated, he jumped ship and got the hell out of Dodge. I guess he retired thinking that it would not follow him. However, they continued the investigation and found him guilty of sexually harassing these women, to the point where I believe they're looking into kind of dismantling his retirement funds or any kind of benefits he may be receiving from his retirement. So, I mean, he put himself in a bit of a pickle here for his misconduct. He's claiming that the women are disgruntled because they were passed up for a promotion. I mean, if that ain't the oldest line in the book for failed harassment, for failed, defense of harassment, especially when men are concerned. I think that's the same argument Clarence Thomas used against Anita Hill. I mean, come on, it's 2020, try something new. But however, yeah, so this man, did all this, and he has, got to face the music, I guess, in some form, whether that means losing his retirement benefits that he tried to hurry up and snag before he did get in trouble for this, but, it caught up to him. So, I don't know. We'll see. So I'll keep my eyes and ears open for this story. But yeah, it's pretty unfortunate that these women had to go through this. And for countless other women, it's sad and unfortunate. But still, 7 years though, that's a very, very long time. And I understand that people, get scared about losing their jobs because they have a lot riding on them as far as family obligations and so on and so forth. But still, 7 years? I don't know. And also, news to men. Stop leading with your
penis
all out everywhere and just, be you. And if the woman don't like you, and especially if you're married, stop it. Gosh. All right, on to the next. A grand jury has charged a white bar owner in Omaha with the death of a black protester back in May. ABC News has reported that Jake Gardner has been charged with manslaughter over the death of 22-year-old James Scurlock. Scurlock was among those in Omaha protesting police brutality following the death of George Floyd. Surveillance video, of the incident shows Gardner, his father, and a group of protesters trading words with Gardner. Then he pulls out a gun and begins to back away. After being pushed to the ground, Gardner fires 2 shots which sent the protesters fleeing. Sherlock then jumped on Gardner's back and Gardner then shot him. The Douglas County Attorney General's office initially decided not to file charges against Gardner, believing that he acted in self-defense. However, facing scrutiny over the decision, with critics believing that Sherlock was trying to prevent other protesters from being hurt in the wake of that criticism, the request for a grand jury to review the case was granted. Special Prosecutor Frederick Franklin said that the grand jury had access to evidence that other people like Klein did not see. Franklin said that text messages on Gardner's phone and messages he sent on Facebook and his interaction with protesters prior to the shooting undermined the idea that he was acting purely in self-defense. There was significant evidence that was consistent with there being an intentional killing by Jake Gardner, and that evidence comes primarily from him, Franklin told ABC News. Franklin hoped that the charges did not lead to another wave of protests in Omaha. This is not a time for celebration. These are simply charges, he said. Jake Gardner is a man, presumed innocent. As I stand here before you right now, in addition to manslaughter charges, Gardner faces charges of attempted assault, making terroristic threats, and using a gun to commit a felony. Here in this particular story, this story seems to be one, although it is a tragic one, it is one that is still given some sort of hope. And I wish that they would reopen a lot of other cases and do this same diligent work to ensure that the actual defense that the defendant is saying that they were using for self-defense has really been investigated to ensure that that's exactly what happened. And come to find out in this particular story, dealing with a store owner by the name of Jake Gardner and a 22-year-old protester by the name of James Sherlock. Now, basically what happened was James Sherlock and many others were protesting against the police brutality of George Floyd. This happened in Omaha, Nebraska, right? So like many other cities across the United States, after George Floyd's death, there was a lot of protest. So these protests went on. Many people got together and, tried to stand up to power. Some store owners felt that people were going to rob and loot their stores, so they, some of them claimed to use protective action, either closing their stores or having some sort of firearm to defend off people from looting or robbing their stores, which really none of that happened, and a lot of that did happen. Reports have come out that some of it didn't even come from us. They came from police officers dressed in regular clothes to incite violence and show that people were being destructive, when in reality it wasn't always the protesters. But anyway, so this young man, the store owner got into it with a few of the protesters, okay? And the store owner was pushed to the ground by someone, and then the store owner pulled out his weapon. And upon pulling out his weapon, this young 22-year-old man, after the crowd kind of dispersed, running, in fear for their own lives, trying to, make sure they don't get shot, he jumped on the store owner's back to protect people from getting shot. So he was more of a hero than anything. However, the store owner kind of, threw him off his back and then shot him twice and claimed to be self-defense. And at first, they were not going to charge the store owner, and they basically just said flat out it was self-defense. However, and this one needs a little noise because I have one in particular. However,
Gotcha, bitch.
You need another one for that one.
Gotcha, bitch.
They did a little research and a little digging and found out that actually it was not self-defense at all, that he had already planned to, through all of his Facebook posts, his text messages to other people, emails and phone calls, that he had already planned to injure or kill someone involved in these protests. That he was very much against the protests. He was standing with the police, very racist in his undertones and the stuff he was saying online, on Facebook, on other social media outlets, as well as text messages, like I said, and people that he was talking to. So the investigators really got all of that information. So they kind of recanted their get out of jail free card for him, his self-defense plea, and the grand jury has now charged him with manslaughter. So, and I wish they would do this to a lot of other cases. I wish they would do this to Trayvon Martin's. I wish they would reopen Trayvon Martin's case with an actual special prosecutor, not a Republican Trump flunky, but an actual special prosecutor outside of that, and really do a thorough investigation of Zimmerman's stuff he's tweeted after the fact, before the incident, during the trial, all that kind of stuff, and really find out the truth of the matter of exactly what happened, when it happened, and all that stuff. And if they need to go back and charge his ass, they should charge his ass. I know it's double jeopardy and they probably won't do it, but it's just wishful thinking that I'm glad at least in this case justice can start to be served. Now, of course, they're just grand jury charges, which means there are nothing set in stone yet. I mean, we know a lot of times grand juries will always charge to kind of calm down the unrest and the crowds of people, because that's mainly what made them rethink the whole thing. People were protesting and demanding answers, so they had to kind of step it back. However, pressure causes things to move and things to happen. So I'm glad to see that this is moving in a direction of true justice. We just hope that it follows through all the way to the end, and not just enough to quiet the loud voices in the crowds. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes, plans to argue that the responsibility for Floyd's death lies largely with the two former colleagues. These inexperienced cops, he says, failed to de-escalate a confrontation that began when they tried to arrest Floyd for attempting to use a counterfeit $20 bill, which is a misdemeanor. While there is plenty of blame to go around, Chauvin's defense strategy seems more than a little iffy in light of his behavior that day and his history of using restraints like that one that killed George Floyd. Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder in connection with Floyd's May 25th death, which provoked nationwide protests against police brutality. He also faces lesser charges of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Thomas Lane and J. Alexander Kulang, the officers who arrested Floyd outside of the Cups Food, a convenience store and takeout restaurant on Chicago Avenue, are charged with aiding and abetting either second-degree murder or second-degree manslaughter. So is Tu Tao, an officer who stood by as the three colleagues restrained a handcuffed Floyd face down on the pavement, dismissing the concern on onlookers who repeatedly warned that Floyd's life was in danger. All three officers thoroughly face up to 25 years in prison for unintentionally second-degree murder, although the presumptive penalty under Minnesota's sentencing guidelines is about 12 years. They were all right. And in this particular case, all I can say for this one is
Oh, hell no!
So, all right, Derek Chauvin. And Derek Chauvin, for those of you who may not know who Derek Chauvin is the Minneapolis Metro police officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes. He is now claiming his defense is that the other two officers, the first two officers who encountered George Floyd and did not detain him well, they did not de-escalate the situation well enough, then they caused George Floyd's death and not Derek Chauvin. Now,
Oh, hell no!
I'll wait. Okay. Let's just break it down a little bit, right? In the brief time that I have. Those two officers were not the officers who had their knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes, looking sinisterly at the people who are yelling at him to take his knee off of George Floyd's neck, or the cries that George Floyd could not breathe as he continued to apply his pressure on his end to George Floyd's neck. Now, granted, the other two officers who's holding him down are just as accountable because they could have gotten up and said, hey, that's enough, or anything of that nature. And so could have, the Asian American man could have said something too that was, standing guard against the police on one end and the protesters or the people objecting to what was going on the other. And of course, he didn't do anything but look kind of scared and, oh my God, I don't know what to do, kind of nervous, just crazy. But the fact that this man could really sit here and go, oh no, I didn't cause George Floyd's death. These two officers and their lack of training, they're rookies, caused George Floyd's death. Because if they detained him well, he would not have to come into the situation and handle it the way that he did. I just call bullcrap on that. Because there is no defense. It is really indefensible. There is nothing you could say to defend that. I mean, even when he came, the body cam footage that was released a few months ago just recently shows that, look, we're at a point where they asked him to get into the vehicle, which is the SUV police vehicle. He got in, and there was a scuffle on the other side of the door, which I believe Derek Chauvin was on the other side of the vehicle, hemming him up, because you could hear him screaming and saying, "You're choking me," and all this other kind of stuff. And I believe Derek was on the other end of the vehicle that you could not see because the door was closed, roughing up George Floyd, to the point where George Floyd was like, all right, fine. I'm claustrophobic. I done told y'all that. Just put me outside. Just let me lay on the ground. But just because he asked to be laid on the ground, does not mean you need to proceed to kill him when you already had him handcuffed. So, I mean, it's really ridiculous. And I think, I don't know. I think everybody has this sense of they think that we're all just as dumb, just like the president thinks that we're all dumb. And you could just say whatever, and everybody's just gonna, oh well, yeah, that makes sense, because it doesn't, not at all. And I can't see a true judge, or a jury for that matter, an honest, true jury, really soaking in that defense as, oh yeah, that I could see that. That's totally ridiculous. Like, your actions caused that man's death. No, your actions did. And those people that were complicit in your actions caused that man's death. So they should be punished as well. And that's just it. Sally, which made landfall early Wednesday near the Gulf shores of Alabama as a Category 2 storm, was downgraded in the afternoon to a tropical storm as maximum sustaining winds dropped to 70 miles per hour. Some parts of the Gulf Coast have been inundated with more than 18 inches of rain over the previous 24 hours, with more precipitation expected as the storm winds slow, the National Hurricane Center has reported. Several residents along the Alabama and Florida coast say that damage from the slow-moving storm caught them off guard. The coastal communities of Pensacola, Florida suffered over 5 feet of flooding, and travel was cut by damaged roads and bridges. More than 500,000 homes and businesses across the area were without power as the storm knocked over stately oak trees and tore power lines from the poles. Upon landfall at the Gulf shores, Sally's winds were clocked in at about 105 miles per hour. Along the coast, piers were ripped away by the storm surge and wind. Alabama's governor told residents to not go outside to check on the damage unless necessary, and to stay away from live power lines and fallen trees. In Pensacola, however, there were wind gusts that were clocked at about 77 miles per hour. And with this hurricane news of Sally that hit landfall on Wednesday morning, prayers go out to the people of the coast of Florida, the Gulf Coast of Florida, as well as Alabama and parts of Louisiana as well. I'm sure that they have gotten some rain or some kind of storm situation due to Sally, even though Sally has been reduced from a hurricane to a tropical storm, still at winds of 70 miles per hour, which was pretty strong to uproot trees, down power lines, and so on and so forth. So prayers go out to them. Of course, we're still dealing with the pandemic of COVID, so it is difficult to, treat people and have people move to safety and be safe in an environment where COVID is running rampant. So prayers go out to them, all of our people in those lining areas. Keep them in prayer. If you can help or send something as a relief fund or what have you, I'm sure that will be greatly appreciated. But the main thing we can do is keep those people in our prayers and thoughts as we move along into the seasons of hurricane season and fall coming upon us and the change of weather. So that's the best thing we can do. And again, prayers go out to them. Hey, this is Captivating Christian here to remind you to tune in to Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. You never know what you might get. President Donald Trump blames blue states for increasing the nation's death rate from coronavirus, suggesting that if you take blue states out of the equation, the United States would be far more competitive with other states. Trump has long blamed Democratic leaders for a variety of ills, including Democrat-run cities, where protests against police have occasionally turned violent. But his remarks on Wednesday were the most explicit politicization yet from the handling of the COVID-19. It comes as Trump has been forced to defend metrics that indicate the U.S. has been in a worse position than many other nations dealing with the pandemic. The president's remarks speaking to reporters at the White House started off arguing that the United States was handling the virus well compared to other nations, despite the fact that the blue states have tremendous death rates. All right, and this particular story comes from who else but our president.
You're a fucking idiot.
So basically, in this story, he believes that the coronavirus pandemic death rate would not be so high if we didn't have the blue states, because the blue states are the states that have contributed the most to the death toll of many Americans in the United States. And without the blue states, we would be more competitive with other nations in the combat with the coronavirus, aka COVID-19, right? That, of course, is pure BS, because we know that two things are happening. That red states are popping up out of nowhere with numbers of COVID that are spiking every day. Florida, let's not forget, is an epicenter of the COVID-19, actually surpassing California and pretty much surpassing New York as well. So much so that the governor stopped promoting the numbers, even firing some health officials for actually blowing the whistle and saying, hey, no, these numbers are actually higher than what's being reported. So many people have lost their jobs, due to the fact that this governor is trying to, use Trumpian mentalities and suppress the true numbers so he doesn't look bad and it looks great for the president. Just kissing behind. But anyway, he's doing that, and we get to a place where you have, people dying. And for you as the leader of this nation, of blue and red, regardless if they voted for you or not, for you to sit here and even say that most of the cities, democratic cities, which have been dealing with all this unrest because of police brutality and having all these riots and things of that nature. And we all know, again, this is all code language for racial animosity, racial hatred, because a lot of people just identify a blue state with a state that, has a lot of people of color in them, and things of that nature. So, sometimes you gotta read past the mumbo jumbo, like, oh, he didn't really mean that, but he does. It's still stirring the pot of division. Even though he'll sit here and say, oh yeah, I know, I like all people, I don't have a racist bone in my body, and then turn around and you say stuff like that. Again, when you are the leader of all states, everybody. That's funny. And again, being that, of course, you're an idiot because you're going to sit here and lie and not talk about Florida's numbers skyrocketing through the roof and still climbing, Texas skyrocketing through the roof and still climbing, Alabama, all these red states that, suppress numbers to make you look good. All the while, people are dying, are increasingly getting infected, and still not adhering to wearing their mask and doing all these things because you don't do it in public, but you knew and still know the dangers of this virus. And we found that out through the white man who you like to, spill all your beans to, like you're on the phone with your little girlfriend, kicking up your heels and cracking and laughing and having a good kiki, and then you come on camera and act like, oh, I'm this big tough guy. So I'm just starting to think a little bit about you that I think of Lady G, that somebody might be a little
Gay.
I mean, I don't know, Trump. You seem to be really cozy with this, with that reporter all the time, just spilling all your tea, like, Like you having a good time and then you get in front of the cameras and you act like you don't even know the man. I'm just trying to figure out something's going on. Something's going on. But anyway, yeah. So this is what it is. Stay vigilant, folks. Remember to vote. November can't come fast enough to get this knucklehead out of here. A police officer has been suspended after a video emerged of him brandishing his gun at a black doctor parking on his own driveway in Colorado. Media outlet 9 says that Dr. P.J. Palmer lodged a complaint with the Aurora Police Department, saying that he was confronted by an officer in an incident he believed was racially motivated.
You're on my property, leave.
He says he was trying to park.
Stay in the car. No.
In his own garage. Dr. P.J. Parmar says instead he was stopped by an Aurora officer with a gun.
He jumped out of his car.
Let me see your f***ing hands.
Told me to get my bleeping hands in the air and was right at my door with his gun at my head.
Body cam footage worn by the man only identified as Officer Henderson in the video shows a similar story.
I was scared a little bit, but he had me as a deer in the headlight.
Parmar says he was just dropping off Boy Scout gear at one of 2 Mango House properties he owns. When he couldn't pull through, he says he honked at the officer to move, which is when the situation escalated.
I looked at the video and my first thought was, my goodness, Dr. Palmer has nerves of steel.
Civil rights attorney David Lane says when an officer draws their weapon, it's considered use of force, something the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled is only allowed if an officer reasonably fears their life is in danger.
No.
Being illegally parked in Dr. Palmer's lot and getting honked at should not put a reasonable police officer in fear that their life is in danger.
At the end of June, Lane and Parmar sent a letter to the city attorney's office to discuss department changes and possible discipline for the officer.
I don't have much faith that any meeting's going to come of it.
They're giving the city until the close of business Friday to respond before they file a federal lawsuit. Aurora Police says this incident is part of an ongoing internal affairs investigation and wouldn't comment further.
It's the wolf investigating the wolf den.
Now here's this particular story which I find kind of weird. Okay, so we just watched the video clip of exactly what happened. I have a few questions, some of which aren't that important. There's just me being me and it's just my personal observation. But as far as him, my first thing, which is aside from the actual real issue, is him being black. I mean, maybe. I don't see it. I see like East Asian, Indian maybe. But I mean, if he identifies as black, you know, hey, I'm not gonna argue. I was just like, yeah, okay. But anyway, more seriously, that's just me fooling around, pay me no mind. But seriously, on to the matter. The particular police officer, if you didn't see the clip, you gotta watch it on the replay, but the particular officer was pretty much in his driveway because he had a little thing, a driveway that was kind of under. So I guess he probably, and I'm sure that officers hid there many of nights, either patrolling or trying to catch someone or doing God knows what out of sight of other officers or what have you. So when the doctor pulled up to get some equipment for the Boy Scout thing that he runs, he blew the horn at the cop for the cop to move because he was in his driveway. And the cop did not. The cop wanted to point his gun at him to tell him, oh, you know, who are you? Why are you here? And those kind of stuff. And, you know, I'll give it to the man. He had balls of steel because he wasn't flinching. He was just like, move. Like, I need you to move. And the police officer had the gun pointed straight to his face, light in his face and everything. He was like, I need you to move. I got to do stuff, So I don't, And then that part of, we're talking about Aurora, Colorado. So, that part of the world is a little different. I'm sure they're aware that a lot of some people in Colorado have money, so they deal with them a little differently. Even unlike that young man that they drugged and killed that we just found out about months later. But this particular story, I don't know. I mean, I hope they sue, because that's what should happen. But my concern is trying to figure out, why was the officer there in the first place, and what was he doing there? Yeah, all of the interaction between the cop and the civilian citizen should be in question. But why would a cop just be sitting there? It's a business location and it has an underpass where there's parking. So I'm guessing it was his private practice, and an apartment that he has there as well, because he owns the whole building. Get into all that. So yeah, definitely the man has money. And that's just a second place, but I guess, he stores stuff there. So my question is, what was the officer doing there in the first place? Probably hiding out, sleeping, doing whatever, and got caught off guard. But he was so aggressive towards the man. But I'm just thankful he didn't get shot or killed or anything of that nature, because that would have been a travesty. But, like I said, the doctor handled him quite well. He was just like, I need you to move. And I'm not letting you go until I know who you are. He was like, be that as it may, I got stuff to do. Went to the office, grabbed what he needed to grab, and started to back up as the officer was still talking and pointing a gun. And he had no fear. So kudos to him for not having fear and not backing down from the privilege of the other officer. But I really hope he sues. I think we need to just start doing that every time, and not just letting small infractions go, but anytime we are met with aggression unnecessarily, just hold on to it, grab the information that you need to grab, badge numbers and so on and so forth, and handle it in court and file complaints and take it as far as you can take it, to show anybody that we're not gonna stand for this type of stuff any longer. We're not just gonna sit by and let you do and say whatever and not follow through with action, because we are. And be sure to join Jay Wilson, Rebel Son, The Official Kingpin, Conscious TV, and Captivating Christian this and every Thursday at 6:45 Central Standard Time, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time for the Gentleman's Panel, where we are not afraid to go there and discuss an array of topics. See you there. Yelp on Wednesday released its latest economic impact report, revealing business closures around the U.S. are increasing as a result of the coronavirus. As of August 31st, more than 163,735 businesses have indicated on Yelp that they have closed, a 23% increase since mid-July. According to Yelp's data, permanent closures have reached 97,966, representing 60% of closed businesses that won't reopen. In addition to monitoring closed businesses, Yelp also takes into account the businesses whose closures have become permanent. The number has steadily increased throughout the past 6 months, now reaching 97,966 8,966, representing 60% of closed businesses that won't reopen. Overall, Yelp's data shows that business closures have continued to rise, with a 34% increase in permanent closures since the last report in mid-July. Alright, and this particular story are about, closing businesses.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so pretty much, we need to start praying because the ship is going down. A lot of businesses are closing. So, when people are looking for, we need to get back to normal, a lot of these businesses are not opening back up, which means that, you're kind of, don't show the numbers of unemployment, or, just a couple months ago, we had great unemployment numbers. Due to this pandemic, these numbers look like this, but it's just the pandemic, because when we get over this, we can get back to good numbers. But if these businesses are closed permanently, doesn't that mean that people don't have jobs and they will then be unemployed, right? Right. So, yeah, this is going to be, or shaping up to be, a really tough climb out of this pit due to the lack of urgency that this president, as well as this administration, put into really attacking what was happening when it was way over in China, like he likes to say, when it was way over in China that you did nothing about, instead of always touting it and calling it to be some kind of something else, or not being real, or always saying that
it's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
Instead of just saying that and actually telling the truth, when you knew the truth and you knew exactly what it was, you continued to always and keep on saying all this stuff, and even talking about how much
it's political bullshit.
And it really wasn't. It was true, and people were really dying, and you took that for granted. And now you're in a place where you can't even reverse the damage that you've done. And I think the only thing that people are looking at your opponent for is to stop the bleeding, because we're bleeding and it's not even pretty. Like, there is internal bleeding everywhere. And it's just that people don't see it, because a lot of the businesses that kind of remained afloat are businesses in which auto dealerships, where, people are getting their car fixed and oil changed and stuff like that. The grocery store markets, or those stores that kind of sell both, like the Targets, or Target, as some of you like to say, or the Walmarts, things of that nature, the CVS's, those places are staying open. But these mom and pop, stores, a lot of these big name department stores that just have clothing or furniture, a lot of them have to close down shop. Now, whether they are, utilizing internet shopping as a source, who knows? But a lot of these places are closing down because they don't have the foot traffic to keep the lights on. So, this is a lot bigger than a little stimulus loan could help, especially when a lot of the big businesses who already make the money was applying and had their hands out too for PPP funds, which was the payday protection loan. So, I mean, you can't win. You can't win either way you look at it, and you still have $130 million sitting of funds that have not been used, but yet businesses are closing permanently, and you got Mitch McConnell dragging his turkey neck feet for what? Of course, because he has his money, so he's not concerned. And if anything, again, they'll do something right before the election in hopes that you'll vote for me now because I did something for you. But I'm really hoping that the people, regardless of what may happen before November 3rd, that you keep in mind all of these things that have happened, and you vote that way. You vote with truth, not with what you hope for. Even if you believe in this president, It's not what you hope this president will do. He has shown you what he is capable of and what he will do. And in the words of the great Maya Angelou, if someone shows you who they are, believe them, darling. Believe them. And so we must believe him and know that he is who he is. And he's not going to be the president that we would like him to be. Even if we don't like him, we still would want him to be somewhat of a president to the United States. And he's not that. So therefore, we gotta give up the ghost. Let it go. You tried it. Oh well. Let somebody come in, fix it up a bit. And let's not keep making these same routine habits where we have somebody, a Democrat, come in, they fix it. We let a Republican come in, they fuck it up, and a Democrat comes in and fix it again. And can we stop the cycle, please? Please, until we get some Republicans that can grow on things and move things upward, instead of always tearing something down and then always want to talk about how fiscally smart and fiscally intelligent they are about how they budget, and look at the deficit, and it's getting so much. We need to stop all this big spending. When they do the most spending, I'm just like, they do the most spending because they do the most stealing. They are stealing the money. They're just getting it. It's all about it. It's just... So, we need to get on it. And please vote, people, vote. That is your voice. That is your power. Don't let them take it from you, because if you do, they will take it. They're trying to take it right now as we speak. So all we can do is fight up against it. And by that, use your voice, vote. Early voting starting soon. Please follow me on other platforms. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter. I will be posting stuff. Thank you for all of you who send me DM posts of updates in their own particular cities about when early voting starts. I will be posting. When I get the information, I will post it out. Those of you who get information, please send it, email, whatever, and I will make sure it gets out. So thank you. And with that, that's all. Thank you for coming by, and hope to see you next week. Don't forget to stay tuned tonight. Tune back in to the Gentleman's Panel. It will be on Rebel Sun's channel tonight. So don't forget to hang out with us on the Gentleman's Panel on Rebel Sun's channel. All right. So with that, guys, it's time to bounce on out of here. All right. See you guys. Peace. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.